Hey, everybody. This is your daily dose of all things royal. Welcome back, my gorgeous, good looking friends. I hope you had a chance to see this beautiful video with Catherine and her children at the baby bank doing community service. I mean, can we honestly say that we're surprised that Meghan and Harry would release another impact report on top of the one that they already released earlier this year? All because they have to make it look like they're doing something when in actuality they're doing nothing. But anyhow, if Meghan wants to play this game, she put it out into the public domain and it's fair use to critique. So here I go. Please be sure that you're somewhere comfortable, and if you have high blood pressure, I recommend either skip this video or take some medicine, as there are some moments in here that will make your blood boil, as it did mine. But anyhow, before we get into it, please don't forget to hit the like button. As always, I put a lot of work into these videos, and this one is filled with wonderful knowledge for the world to see. Okay, let's rip this apart. So we begin with Archewell Public Charity launching their impact report for 2020 to 2022 at the beginning of this year in January. Made no kind of sense, but okay, we went with it. Now they decide to drop another impact report for covering 2022 and 2023, as if the first one that covered 2022 didn't suffice. Now, I am going to tell you that this is all part of throwing shit in people's faces to confuse them so they can't be tracked or traced. But no worries, we've sorted this all out so we can make sure that the facts stay the facts and people see exactly what shenanigans and manipulation they are doing here to fool the public around this Fugazi charity that they're running. All right, for starters, let's kick this off with the letter from the co-executive directors, Shauna Knepp and James Holt. In January, Archewell's mission statement or belief or whatever word salad that they were trying to communicate is fundamentally different now to the one that was presented here in December. I'm not going to go over the first one because that was word salad. We need to look at this second one because there is a clear shift and focus into what Archewell really is trying to be, which is a political entity to drive censorship and control of the media, whether it be in the online space as well as in the broadcast space. So, according to the co-executive directors at Archewell Foundation Public Charity, we believe in striving for greater interconnectedness and its ability to transcend division. We believe in the pursuit of finding purpose, belonging, and joy, and are dedicated to helping as many people as possible to achieve it. I'm sorry, but I don't want Meghan or Harry telling me what my purpose is here in life. I have God to give me that purpose. These two have no God. All they see is dollar, dollar, dollars. Anyhow, as each of us makes our way through the world, with the news we read, the social media that we engage with, it's often easy to forget the simple humanity of what brings us together. Wait for it, this next line. We are committed to a simple but profound mission to show up and do good. I think they forgot to finish the sentence. To show up and do good as long as we're paid and it's for good PR. Our work, especially this year, has been rooted in fostering community and remaining responsive to those in need amidst the evolving challenges we encounter in today's world. Now you know Meghan wrote that paragraph. Oh, that's a dead giveaway that this is Meghan. Anytime you see the words rooted and community inside the same sentence, you know that that's come from Meghan's list of buzzwords that she just throws in, trying to make it sound like she's making a point when in actuality is making no point. As we see issues arise, we focus on resolving the root causes and prioritizing lasting solutions. It is through this work that we have been fortunate to connect with some of the most inspiring people, brave women displaced from their home country of Afghanistan, starting community groups in their new homes, the families in Uvalde who have worked with us to build playgrounds in their close-knit towns so that look, do you see how ridiculous this sentence is? Correct me if I'm wrong here, but shouldn't there be some type of comma or periods inserted in here? It feels like it's just one long run on sentence of various different topics that they've jumbled together. You would think somebody would have proofread this, no? So we know that this couple have been targeting the youth in this space. And you can see with the last sentence or the last part of this run on sentence, entrepreneurs who will be the driving force behind a new generation of technology and the online world. So you can bet that Megan will be leaving behind Black people very shortly and any type of girl programs that doesn't involve technology, most likely jumping on the AI bandwagon and getting behind that in order to regulate and control it so they can make money. That's really all this is about. And to finish off this Meganese, through these stories and the people they belong to, we find inspiration. Through our connections, we find joy. We hope you will too. Well, not everybody wants to be connected to Meghan and Harry. These are the two most toxic people on the planet. Now, when you look at both these letters, it's pretty much the same thing. It's a whole bunch of words telling you a whole bunch of nothing. But in December, you can see that it's more refined and directed towards this control over the media, which we've known this whole entire time. And after reviewing not only these reports, but also the tax filing for 2022, this organization should not qualify for being tax exempt, as it is politically motivated. Okay, now let's look closer at this Fugazi report that they dropped in order to take attention away from the Princess of Wales. As you can see here, they throw up more word salad. Archewell Foundation uplifts communities across the globe. Yeah, if that's your opinion, but how do you really know that? You don't. The numbers that they throw up here have no source as to where they pulled the numbers from. My assumption is Megan's ass. I mean, 3,176 hours of trauma informed mental health support provided to individuals in Turkey and Syria following the tragic earthquake. Well, okay, you gave this mental health support, but what came of it? Did you prevent X amount of people from taking their lives? Or did you help them get back on their feet with giving solid advice and being there to comfort them? Like this means nothing. You could have given all these hours away and it still achieved nothing. 237 women coming together in community through the Welcome Project. Okay, so they got together. Now what? What's painfully clear here is that they've included everything that they did at last minute for 2023 into this report. My guess is that they didn't have enough to talk about for 2022, hence the reason why they're bringing up this 2,500 girls in Nigeria receiving menstrual products and health education. That happened this year. You should talk about that in next year's report, but I guess we're going to have to hear the story again, but I'm sure they're going to twist the narrative in a way to change it up so we don't notice. But don't you worry, we will make note of it. So the report goes into explaining the Welcome Project. And here is where I am putting Meghan Markle on blast for taking credit of an organization that has been around for a long time. But anyhow, she wants the world to believe that because of her work from Grenfell Towers, it inspired her to create this Welcome Project in 2023. Of course, Meghan has to leverage her time with the royal family and not give credit to that because she wants people to believe that it was all her, but we know that it was not. Listen to this load of tripe. She was reminded of the positive impact that the Hub Community Kitchen had on the women who grieved the loss of so much following the Grenfell Tower fire in West London in 2017. It was a place they gathered and cooked and a home for a community that is still deeply connected to this day. Following that visit, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex began seeking ideas. The Archewell Foundation mobilized quickly to partner with Team Rubicon and welcome U.S. to help address the needs of families resettling in the U.S., which can be particularly challenging when it comes to accessing education, employment opportunities, and healthcare services. As efforts continued, the Archewell Foundation heard repeatedly about the intense social isolation women in particular were experiencing. With a belief in the power of connection and a goal of uplifting communities, the Archewell Foundation launched the Welcome Project in 2023. Lies, 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 lies. Meghan wants the world to think that this was Archewell's great idea, when in fact it was the White House that put together this Operation Allies Welcome and marshaling a whole of America approach to safely, securely, and effectively welcoming our Afghan allies and Afghans at risk, in concert with Welcome.us. Okay, we know that Meghan has no shame, but James Holt and Shannon Knepp, who are supposedly these co-executive directors, aren't you embarrassed that you're lying like this? This is so ridiculous. I don't know what world these people are living in if they think that the public is that stupid not to see that this is a fat lie. I hate to say it, but then that makes you look like you're just like Meghan Markle and also a liar. In what world do these people live in? Do they honestly think that just because you put a glossy packet together and put Meghan's rictus grin across every other page, people are going to believe the compassion and empathy and impact that this Fugazi public charity is supposedly doing when it's not? Again, here we have more stats that have been pulled out of Meghan's asshole. I'm surprised that she didn't put it at 100% for each one of these, since she's so perfect and Archewell is really making this impact. A good portion of this impact report is redundant, considering a lot of the information came from that insight report that they dropped the day after, trying to take the spotlight away again from the Prince and Princess of Wales. No shocker, right? Anyhow, all this distraction and fluff that's been put into this BS impact report is really supposed to distract away from the elephant in the room, which is this 2022 IRS tax filing, which we will now get into. All right, folks, many of you have probably seen this by now or have read some of the headlines today as this has been blowing up. But for 2022, Archewell has gross receipts, meaning revenue wise, of only $2,005,052. Which, as opposed to the year prior, they had gross receipts of a little over 13 million. You know, I've said it from day one, everything about this organization is dodgy. So you may recall that in 2021, Meghan and Harry had two contributors, one who gave 10 million and someone else who gave 3 million. In 2022, the same amount of contributors, but a lot less money. So, two contributors giving $1 million each. Now, I have said that I didn't think that the money that was given last year came from Oprah. I believe that it actually came from Meghan and Harry as a way to avoid paying taxes, in which they put this money into a DAF and are using it for their charity. I think it's a similar situation here. I mean, I'm not sure, but I would suspect, being that it's the same quantity of contributors and they don't have any other donations coming from any other sources, my guess is they are investing their own money in here in order to skirt the system and try and get this business to get off the ground, which is not going so well. There's a big difference when you look at the actual mission statement from 2021 to 2022. Last year, there was a whole bunch of word salad. This year, more word salad, but more focused into technology and the ecosystem in shaping it for the world's safety. In other words, masking it for control to push policy and regulation. As you can see here, money has been invested in so-called uplifting communities, but at the same time seeking to create a better, more trustworthy, and diverse information environment across all forms of media. And we know that this is Harry's obsession, and that is to control the mainstream media, which I find scary that he is here in the United States doing this and we are allowing it because everybody is so distracted, not paying attention to what these two fools have been doing. Now, when you look at this up close, aimed at creating a technology ecosystem designed for good, one that is safe, healthy, inclusive, and innovative, and seeking the creation of a better, more trustworthy media, what happened to mental health? All of a sudden now it doesn't even exist in this return. So we know that they are straying away from that and focusing more in the technology sphere, which, we saw this coming all along. And, I think people need to start waking up because they are actively working to undermine this country and our Constitution. Meghan and Harry do not believe in democracy and they do not believe in freedom of speech. So, all this flowery language that we see here is all fluff and not to be taken seriously. This should really be reviewed by the IRS for being misleading and fraudulent. So, when you look closer at these numbers, it does tell a story. And that story is that a whole lot of nothing is going on here. In fact, you're seeing a decrease in the amount of grants that were given out, but an exorbitant amount of money going to salaries, which we would consider overhead. So, looking at this, they generated only $2 million, gave out 1.2 million, but then up the salaries and compensation to over 500,000. So, how much impact are they really making? To me, it doesn't look like anything. Now, looking at the rest of these numbers, sure, the total expenses are down from the prior year, but keep in mind they weren't generating any kind of revenue, which would make sense that it would be lower, but it should have been a lot lower considering what they spent was more than what they brought in. When you look at the salaries and other compensation, that amount went up 5 times. So you have people working for you. What did they do all year? Should have been the grants going to helping people. Instead, that number went down by 50%. The other number that's alarming to me is the almost $800,000 for other expenses. We'll visit that in a second when we go through the functional expenses and breakdown. So let's look deeper here on how they spent this money. For our reference to understand whether it's good or bad, I placed 2021 next to 2022 so you can see where the numbers fall. So looking at this, we see that only 1.1 million went for grants as opposed to the 3 million. And then when you look at the salaries, we went from 63,000, which was James Holt's salary, to 338,000. And then you have other salaries and wages that went up about 5 times as much. Scrolling down, you see there are other expenses that are hovering around still the 500,000 mark. On what? I have no idea. And then office expenses, you see we have almost $60,000 as opposed to in 2021 it was only 4,000. So what's going on there? Then we're seeing the number for travel at 34,000. I think that number doesn't seem right. These numbers look totally fugazi. As you're seeing here, no fundraising expenses. So, what is all this going towards? That's the bigger question. They're not paying for any type of advertising or promotion. It just seems a little bit wasteful, in my opinion. Okay, let's drill down now into the compensation of the current employees. Okay, so looking at this, apparently James Holt gave himself a promotion. He went from 59,000 in salary to over $200,000 in compensation. It also shows that he's working a few more hours. I mean, I think they caught on to the fact that 1 hour a week was kind of ridiculous. So now looking at the 227,000 he is getting to run the business essentially does make a little bit more sense. It does appear that Archewell has hired 2 more people, Michael Dale Stein, and we know of Shauna Knepp, who is supposed to be the co-executive director with James Holt. She's also the treasurer and secretary, so she's wearing 3 hats, but only getting 92,000? What? As you can see, Meghan Markle does not support gender pay parity as well as diversity. We have 2 males that are Caucasian and 1 female that is Caucasian. So help me understand, where are the sisters? A little fun fact about Michael Dale Stein. It appears that he came from Sunshine Sachs. Now, I'm not sure if he's still working at Sunshine Sachs, but it would make sense that Sunshine Sachs made it look like Meghan was no longer with them because of all the negative press that Meghan was getting as a result of her, I want to say, shenanigans that have been exposed. Is Michael Dale Stein still working with Sunshine Sachs and Meghan is paying him? That's a possibility. But I wanted to put that out there so you know what we're dealing with. Now, we all know that Sunshine Sachs is connected to the Democratic Party. I mean, he is best friends with Hillary Clinton. So it's no surprise that this guy, too, is also a heavy Democrat who was press secretary to Senator Al Franken of Minnesota. So, all that we're seeing about the Democrats turning the back on Meghan, I think, is all part of the publicity PR machine to get people to not look at Meghan in that way in order for her to do all the dirty, underhanded things that she is doing from behind the scenes in trying to push this policy and regulation for the Democrats, because this is what's going on right now. The control of the media is up for grabs at the moment, and we have an election coming up. So, what are we seeing again? We're seeing the Democrats start putting their forces into play to ensure that they do not lose the election. So, following along the lines of support for Archewell, in addition to the employees that they were paying over $500,000, they were also paying almost $500,000 for advice. So in 2021, Archewell had hired Invisible Hand, which is another one of those woke social justice warrior entities that make white people feel bad for being white, even though the founder is white and is apologizing almost every single day for her involvement in white privilege, Genevieve Roth. We realized that KMLSA, which I believe was Michelle Obama's advisor, no longer is being used in 2022. They kept on Invisible Hand for $180,524, but then brought in Beth Hurley and her company, paying her over $100,000. And then we have a new one here, Jory Craig. Now, does that name ring a bell? Hold that thought. We'll get to her in a second. I just want to make the point that look at all this money that they spent for advice and they couldn't generate more than $2 million. I'm just saying. Also, take note that Beth Hurley and Jory are both out of the UK. What's that all about? These three advisors have an agenda. Invisible Hand is for the Black people. Beth Hurley is for the Afghan veterans. And then Jory, she has the biggest part to all of this, and that's the digital policy and regulation sector. And I will get to her after we go through all the grants or the strategic investments, is what I will call it, that Archewell had made for that 1.1 million. And I'd like to point out that since Meghan is so fixated on the color of your skin, all three of these advisors are middle aged white women. So, who is the one with the real unconscious bias? Archewell definitely can't claim that they are a diverse workforce. Far from it. Okay, so let's switch gears and take a look at the grants that they wrote. So on this list, totaling of $1.1 million, we have the highest contribution of $200,000 going to Georgetown to support grantees' initiatives on gender justice and opportunity to build training. So we'll figure out what that is in a bit. Then we have Kaboom, which we know that Meghan and her Uvalde PR stunt, as well as the playground, I guess, damage control, was purchased there. So they gave $165,000. Then we have the Digital Justice Award with the NAACP for $125,000, which goes towards the censorship initiative. We have the Halo Trust USA. We'll get into that in a second for $100,000. Hope Lab, which is for the Youth Power Responsible Technology Fund that we saw earlier this year. I will also be addressing that. Equimundo, that we see for $65K. Then we have Girls Who Code, another $65K. HIAS, $50K, and so forth. We have all these sub 100s, which getting down to $25K for Project Healthy Minds, Free Press, the Marcy Lab School, they gave $25K each. My assumption that is the cost for the PR that they received. That's just my opinion. And finally, we have two 10K grants written for Nigeria. Now, we'll address all of this in due course. So let's go back to the beginning and talk about Georgetown. So in 2021, they gave Georgetown $25,000 in a grant, and that was for research into the experience of girls in America. Pretty generic, and there was no follow up around that. But fast forward to 2022, they give Georgetown again $200,000 in a grant, in which, if you look further, and I highlighted it here, the explanation is to support grantees' initiative on gender justice, an opportunity to build training addressing adultification bias and the inequities faced by Black girls in the justice, education, and medical systems. So I find that this is quite interesting that so much money was given towards this group. According to the Archewell Foundation Public Charity Impact Report that was just released, this was inspired by the work of Rebecca Epstein at Georgetown Law and building on a previous partnership to explore adultification bias and the inequities faced by Black girls in the justice, education, and medical systems. The Archewell Foundation has partnered with the Center on Gender Justice and Opportunity to develop a groundbreaking curriculum to educate judges in overcoming harmful gender stereotypes, especially those affecting Black women and girls the most. The new training program is currently being piloted by the center with plans for a nationwide rollout in 2024 and an expansion to medical students and professionals, law enforcement, and educators. So, this right here, folks, is dangerous in itself. This sounds a lot like a programming and conditioning curriculum in which they're warping a person's judgment. And I think that that is highly dangerous, in my opinion. So, when we look at this $200,000 that was given to Georgetown Center on Gender Justice and Opportunity, we have to ask ourselves what was in it for Megan? Because we all know that Megan doesn't do anything without there being some benefit to her. And I think that the reason why this was given to Georgetown for this purpose was all for optics. Let's not forget that in 2022, when Meghan and Harry launched their Netflix 6-hour attack onto the royal family, the main theme of that series was all about racism within the institution. And I think that this played into okay, we need to look at unconscious bias and get people to think differently and blah, blah, blah. I'm willing to bet that in 2023, we will not see another dime go to Georgetown, just like how we haven't seen another dime go to all those entities that were supporting the censorship industrial complex. Let me show you. In 2021, $775,000 went into supporting these organizations, of which each of them have a connection and played a role or is playing a role in the censorship industrial complex that we are now seeing in this heated Missouri versus Biden censorship case. We have Stanford University, where Renee DiResta was a part of Aspen. Color of Change was also a part of Aspen. Let's not forget UCLA Foundation, Safia Noble, who was NAACP's recipient of the Archewell Digital Justice Award. She was also part of Aspen. Harvard here rebooting social media. Oh, and who could forget URL Media? Could it be the reason why we've seen less of the sugars is because no money was given to URL Media in 2022? I think that's a very strong possibility, folks. When you look at these organizations and the justification that Archewell gave to giving this money, you realize that this is all just smokescreen and one big scam. Where's the impact from Harvard for that $250,000, Archewell? Oh, could it be these academic fellows finding its way to lobbyists in pushing for policy and regulation on Capitol Hill? I would like to know, for that money, what did these 13 fellows accomplish? Enlighten me, Megan. Here are some more organizations that don't appear to be given any more money in 2022. We have paid leave for all. I guess Megan dropped that one. 19 News, which I think also goes along the lines of those sugars. The Loveland Foundation, all of a sudden, mental health is out the door for women of color. What did they accomplish with all this money that they threw away? I mean, it's not reflected in any of these reports of real tangible impact. So, outside of the Georgetown grant for $200,000, what else did they give to? Well, starting with the international locations, they sunk in almost $70,000 towards independent research investigating the interconnected roles of social media and other content producers, influencers, and journalism in affecting how democratic discourse happens in the digital age. So that 70,000 and listening to this as it being research, no, that money went towards funding the research that I talked about regarding the bill that's being pushed in Australia to pass regulation onto censorship and suppressing free speech. Yeah, that's where that money went to. Then we had another $50,000 that went into promoting non commercial dissemination of independent, factual, and educational news information in Ukraine. Knowing what we know of Harry and Meghan and how they have weaponized the media, I wouldn't be surprised if this money went to an organization that specifically focuses on pushing propaganda to support the war in Ukraine. And I think that there's a lot to be said there, but I don't want to get into that right now because it does get very political. But I believe that there is support for that type of war propaganda. And Harry and Meghan, clearly have shown that they do it. Like Heart of Invictus is a perfect example. Now, when we look at the big ticket items, it's starting to look like there is some type of fudging of the numbers. So in 2021, they had listed the NAACP Digital Justice Award for $125,000. But when you go back to the time frame, Safiya Noble didn't actually receive that award till 2022. So why is this amount reflected here on the 2021 report? So that's an example. Another example is baking the number in of $100,000 for the Hope Lab for the Youth Power Fund. Now, this Youth Power Fund was not set up until 2023. So, why is this amount listed here in the 2022? You see what I'm saying? I think that there is something funky going on with the reporting of these numbers, and they might not actually be representing it accurately. It does appear that Meghan and Harry seem to be cooking the books. That Youth Power Fund grant should not be in the 2022 filing. It should be in the 2023 filing because that fund was not officially set up until 2023 in August. I think there's something fishy here. Now, all of a sudden, we've thrown in Mayhew, which was Meghan's former patronage in the UK when she was working as a royal. Now we are seeing $50,000 go to supporting this organization, in which Meghan did step down. She did write a letter to them, remember? So what's going on with that? Then you ask yourself that question, how does that tie to the Archewell mission statement? It doesn't. That's why I'm saying there's something fishy going on here with these entities being thrown in that shouldn't technically be in here or are applicable. What I find despicable is throwing in the Halo Trust as one of the big ticket items, but in the impact report, make no mention of this charity being the charity that Princess Diana was a part of. In fact, the way that they talk about it, it's almost like as if Meghan is now assuming it as hers. And to me, I find that appalling, especially since the majority of the work that they have been doing have been in this online digital control media. And these random ones that they've thrown in from the UK almost appears as if, yeah, we just got to throw in a couple of these to just make it look like we're not really focused on trying to censor and change policy and undermine the US Constitution. I believe that they threw in these small little ones for 10,000 apiece to make it look like it was diversified. But when you look at the bulk of the grants that were given, for the most part, here they are. They're all affecting and trying to control the digital landscape, which is why I keep harping on the fact that Harry needs to be deported out of the US because he is here undermining our Constitution and our First Amendment rights. He's attacking it from within. Now, if you're not convinced yet that Meghan and Harry, particularly Harry, is part of the censorship industrial complex trying to undermine the US Constitution and tear down our First Amendment rights, then let's go back to this woman that I mentioned earlier, Giori Craig. Why would Archewell spend $120,000 for this woman's advice? It's because her specialty is all about digital policy. As you can see here, she is one of those who is in support, just like Renee DiResta and the rest of these folks who have been involved in trying to get these laws passed globally in the Western world. So here she is, as you can see her experience and what she has been involved with. And it's clear that Meghan and Harry are using her in order to help make those roads into breaking our Constitution. We're seeing this happen in front of our eyes. There's a reason why all of those organizations that Meghan and Harry were given grants to that were part of this censorship industrial complex are now not receiving any more money. That's because they've been found out. Meghan and Harry are very much a part of this, and we really need to draw attention to that fact and get this guy out of this country. I mean, I've had enough. There has to be a solid reason on why Harry's so adamant to get the security back. And the more and more that I think about it, I think it has a lot to do with this stuff and his interference, not only with trying to undermine the Constitution, but also around the time of the elections and January 6th. Remember when Meghan was at that mental health day and she sheepishly stated, yes, and probably policy? I've never seen Meghan stumble in her words before. And in that moment, you could tell that she was being shady because she knew that what they have been doing is wrong. And they're trying to mask it as, oh, we just want to keep our kids safe, which I don't believe for 1 second. I'm all for keeping our children safe, but the problem I have is you have these two predators who have not only lied and manipulated using the media, but they also weaponized it. And they have shown us what propaganda looks like. They have showed us what misinformation looks like. And for them to be preaching about it and banging on about it in order to change laws and so forth, to me is very concerning. Because it's those type of people you do not want having any type of say or influence because they don't have the right to do so, especially since they are guilty of doing exactly what they say that they're trying to protect our kids from. Please keep in mind that these two have supported and funded an online domestic terror group or global group that is known to harass, dox, bully, threaten, and intimidate on these platforms. So, how can you take them seriously? And how can you take anybody that they are connected with seriously? Because we all know birds of a feather flock together. And this is why I don't trust or feel comfortable with these two having any involvement with influencing our government and American civil rights. The only reason that I can think about as to why all these people support and work with Meghan and Harry on this initiative, even though they have proven themselves to be the biggest hypocrites out there, is because of money. I mean, there's no other explanation. These two are horrible human beings. Why would anyone want to support the causes knowing that they are empty from behind and that it really is there to serve selfish purposes? It's obvious that Meghan and Harry are working with the UK in some capacity. I mean, this woman is an example right here. And if that woman doesn't scare you enough, then let's talk about this lawsuit that Meghan and Harry attached themselves to, or Archewell attached themselves to, in which the AG is getting sued by Net Choice because of the law that was put in place called AB 2273. And this is a content based restriction on speech that will subject a global communications medium, to state supervision, and hobble a free and open resource for exploring the vast realms of human thought and knowledge. This AB 223 presses companies to serve as roving censors of speech on the internet. And NetChoice is pushing back. However, Archewell is in support of the Attorney General, supporting this case in California and saying, yes, we need to have this implemented and put into place. Now, you figure out what's in it for Archewell and why they're so gung ho to keep this quiet. They didn't mention any report that they have put out for Archewell. They're not talking about the fight that they're taking on to challenge NetChoice. This is very disturbing to me that people are not taking this seriously. But as you can see here, their efforts, and I do believe that Harry doesn't care if Archewell makes a profit or not. I think he truly is here to undermine and attack us from within in destroying what our number one freedom is. And that, to me, is deeply concerning. But I'll leave you with that. What do you guys think? Definitely leave your thoughts below. As always, I will be back with more content. But until then, please be safe, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.
It was such a fraud.